Hello, and welcome to No Fences. I want to welcome everybody that's watching the show, but more important, I want to welcome my guest, Doug Hathaway. And Doug and I have done this one on beliefs and behaviors again before, and we're going to do it again. And we're going to keep going with something we was talking about before the show. We're talking about how some people must have drama in their lives. And I was telling her how my daughter, they need drama. And excuse me, the television industry has figured out that these young people need drama in their life. And thus, Maury and whoever used to work for Maury, Steve Popovich, and all of these shows, where it keeps them in drama. And I used to kind of halfway watch the shows with them if I was just sitting around. But when this chick brought on 13, 14 different men to figure out who was her baby's daddy, I was like, damn, how many men can you screw? Because you only got a 3 or 4 day window. I got daughters where this stuff can happen. So, I knew that the children were just hooked on the drama. And, doing what I do with another program that I deal with, I know that drama can lead me into a lot of trouble.
It's drama, like we talked about, is almost like an addiction in itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's that thing of, let's just say I grew up in a family to where there was a lot of drama, a lot of chaos, confusion, fighting, yelling, screaming, or whatever. So I become used to that. That's my norm.
Right.
And I've seen people that grew up like that get into a relationship with somebody that wasn't normal for them, so they don't do it. And I've seen people leave relationships because they look at that as being boring, there's nothing going on, and things like that. So what has happened to them is they now went into what we would call, there's something abnormal going on, which therefore anytime we're uncomfortable, we want to go back to what is comfortable, even if it's chaotic or you name it, whatever it is. People will stay in relationships, people will stay in a lot of things just because that's what I know.
And how true that is. Both of my children's mothers were like hooked on drama. First, especially the last one, she had 6 sisters. Their mother raised them with an attitude of, you a woman by being the toughest bitch in the world, okay? And that's their mentality. I'd laugh and joke. I say, them Bush girls will fight a chainsaw and might win, But my granddaughter, I have watched that roll over into my oldest granddaughter, where because of the stuff her mama did when she was little, drama is her way of life. If there ain't no drama, and it goes, what you were talking about, it could even go a lot further. The boyfriend she has, my great-grandbaby's father, was committed and directed toward that drama. And that's what drew them to each other. Because I asked him one day, what made you want to be with her? He said, well, I was standing out on the corner with the fellas and some of the girls, and she walked through a line of 10 people and was reckless with everybody. You ain't going to do shit, you ain't, that kind of mentality. He said, and that drew me right to her. So you like the chaos and the crazy shit that go with it. That's the one I said he jumped on his man his brother broke into this man's house, and then he jumped on the man when he got out of jail because the man put his brother in jail. And I know people like me, you, and a few other people, neither one of them would have made it to the jail again. So and he was out of jail 2 days once, and then jumped on his kid down the street, and then run when the police come. And it's sad that, it's truly sad to me that that's all you can grow in or be in, when I didn't have that. My house growing up was exactly the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
There was structure, there were people that were educated, not to say uneducated people can't do nothing, but I mean there was structure and there was teaching education. So, we talked about this, and it ain't no answer for it, but even you said about us, if we used to that shit, When we don't have it, we have to make it. There's an old saying, say, ask an addict what time is it, he'll tell you how to make a watch. So.
Yeah, and it's that thing of, think of yourself as a young kid and you got a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, your house, like you were saying, nothing's going on, things are pretty quiet, nobody's yelling and screaming. That little boy where everything's going on, may come over here and say, this is pretty good.
Right, right.
Now, the kid that nothing is going on goes to this other house, and he sees that as being exciting, and that's pretty cool. So there's why we latch on to these different beliefs, even though we may have been taught beliefs at home, that this is how you act, da-da-da-da-da.
Mm-hmm.
Then I always say that then people went to school. So here comes some more beliefs
Mm-hmm.
that we learn. Then we go out further, and then there's more beliefs. And if you run into a thing of addiction or whatever, you pick up all those beliefs,
Right.
because it's like you got to stay up on what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, so, and that's the thing of breaking those patterns, that it's like, no, I don't have to have any drama. I don't need to create any. It's too stressful. And that's why if we use the thing of addicts, there's where relapses come from.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not the using part, it's an emotional,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual lapse.
Right. Chaos creates that. And like you said, I can remember growing up, and then my youngest daughter's mother. See, they are, you know how they talk about generational curses. I believe that any curse can be broken if there is such a thing. But my granddaughter, who I was talking about, she's 18, she had a baby at 15. Her mother is 33 now, she had her at 50. My ex, my daughter's mother, got pregnant, had a baby at 40. And the grandmother got pregnant at 14, had a baby at 15. So it's generation,
Mm-hmm.
and they live for that drama, the women, and my ex has 6 sisters. So their family is like 96% women. My family is like more men. And they live for that drama. You know, they have to have, I mean, I go to one of their family reunions and it's drama. You know, and then my ex-wife, you know, 2 of her brothers got to fighting at a family reunion. Blood brothers, same mother. Got to fighting at a family reunion because one asked, they both come out of prison. One asked the other one how much time you get on parole, how much time you get. And one said, that ain't your fucking business. And they literally start physically fighting at a family reunion, their family reunion. And that's that need for drama and need for, you know, confusion.
And I would say most likely, if I wanted to bet, I'd say that that's not the first and only time that at family functions or just living in a house together,
Right.
that hasn't happened. You know, again, you know, there's this thing that, you know, what we see, then we kind of start to believe in that, then we practice that, and then they say, that's what we become.
Mm-hmm. And the same people I was talking about, 2 of my brother-in-laws, brothers, didn't speak to each other for like 5 years over a woman. I mean, we actually sit at the dining room table on Thanksgiving, and I talk to you, I talk to that camera, I talk to that camera, I talk to that camera, and you talk to me, to that camera, and that camera, and you never communicate with me, and never communicate with somebody that I'm talking to at the same time. And I watched that go on for 2 Thanksgivings, and I could not believe that, because, you know, my grandmother would never have even allowed that. You know, she'd have been broke up at the dinner, let's go talk this out, let's do something. But, and for me, that, you know, that's a need for chaos. My ex-wife grew up with brothers. So if me and her got into a confrontation, she wanted a confrontation, not necessarily physical, but, you know, she wanted to do this. And then the next one I was with was exactly the opposite. She grew up with sisters. So it was best for me to leave the house and give her a couple hours and come back. Or she be trying to stab you, cut you or some shit, because again, back to what I said earlier, that was the mother that taught them, you gotta be a tough broad. That's the only way you a good woman, if you a tough broad. And every one of them in that family have bipolar. Okay.
Yes.
My granddaughter, both of my granddaughters, their mother, my daughter, all the way up to the grandmother is bipolar. And I say this a lot, but I say it with no shame. The 18-year-old that I'm having all the problems with, we having all the problems with, she's the only one that ain't in therapy. And everybody else is in therapy because of some incident where they were conflicted with her, either fighting, struggling with her, going through changes with her, you know. And I've watched her fight her sisters and argue with my grandson, and it took me back. I was like, why don't you leave these kids alone, you know? And it took me back to one of my sister-in-laws. She used to always fight with my daughter because they about the same age, and her other sisters and cousins. And she would always jump on them and attack them and fight them. And I remember when she got older, I said, Mooka, why was you so mean when you were like that? She said, oh, I knew I was tough. So if they would fight me, nobody else would bother them. And that was her mind thought, that if people seen him fighting her, and she, okay, that nobody would bother them. But she did it for about 5 years. You know, and what's crazy was my mother-in-law, the one I was just talking about, I said, Rain, can you get her to stop doing that? She was like, no, them bush bees. And that was what she said, bush bees. And when they get tired, they'll fight her and shit, they'll stop it. And each one of them eventually did it, but all the drama went on for all these years when I thought just a simple, don't do it. But again, her point was, if they fight everybody and become tough, then that's what makes them a woman.
There again, we go back to the thing of beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
That you do this, this, and this, that equals this.
Right. Yeah.
And we run a lot on that.
Yes, we do.
You know, and anything, again, out of the ordinary of that, then you're all kinds of punks and
Exactly.
and whatnot. Especially with men, I used to talk when I'd run a group, and we talk about beliefs, okay? And I always say, think of this idea. I said, you're walking down the street with your little son or whatever. He's got shorts on. It's summertime. He trips, he falls, he skins his knee. He starts to cry. What do you say?
Right.
And a lot of people have said, shut up, man. Don't cry. You're all right. Da-da-da. Any kind of, what's happened is we start getting these messages down here, you know, so then it's like, okay, I better not cry because, you know, I don't want anybody calling me a punk or whatever.
Right.
So, you know, again, it goes to this thing that, you know, I've always worked with adults in substance abuse issues and whatnot, and trying to get people to realize that what's going on now is connected to what went on over here.
And that's exactly what these books talk about, what made me do this. And that's why I invited you back, because you're a great guest and you have a lot of insight into what we're talking about. And I grew up with okay, in my household, I was a bunch of males, and none of us really went to a babysitter until my grandmother passed away. We was all, but my grandmother had already raised 5 boys. So, you know, she had some little boxing gloves and all of that. But at the end, you still had to admit that that's your cousin, you sorry, and you just having them scrap. But some people keep that. It was and I may have said this last time, I remember, it was a couple of guys here in town, 2 brothers, and they got to arguing at one of their reunions, and these people were not related to me, about the last hot dog or the last beer or something. They lived 5 blocks apart. Excuse me, for 5 years they didn't talk to each other, and one died. Other one died shortly after that because it drove him crazy that he didn't talk to his brother over something that petty. You know, and when I grew up in the projects, and we talking about beliefs and behaviors. The belief where I grew up was, it was like a prison mentality. First person jump on you, you fight them hard, you fight to win, because if you don't, everybody else in the projects that could beat them coming to jump on you. And I'm sure, you know, my son has told me that's what prison is about. So, you know, so that belief led me to a behavior of fighting a lot when I was growing up. You know, and then I had 36 cousins, so I fought male cousins. So, you know, a lot were older and some were younger, but we was about 7 of us that were right in the same age bracket within a 4-year group, and we fought each other all the time. Now, we was side by side outside, but, you know, we fought. And my grandmother used to say, I don't like y'all fighting, but I raised 5 boys, and that's how you establish your order. But when the fight was over, she made us sit down and communicate and be friends with each other. And that's not what we see today in the youth.
Oh, no, and things have escalated to such a point to where, like you're talking about, boxing, throwing punches, period,
Right.
was how some things were settled.
Right.
And now, somebody looks at somebody, what they believe to be the wrong way, and somebody pulls out a pistol,
Right.
and, you know, it's all, this whole idea of disrespect is so screwy.
It is, you're right.
It's this thing that what has happened is we believe the only way I will give respect is if I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would kind of try and get to the point to where that's not really how it works.
Right.
I can respect you whether you respect me or not. It's going to be something I'm going to have to learn
Right.
how to do, but, and the object is so I can move on and continue to do what I'm supposed to do and not worry so much about what you're supposed to do or anybody else. That whole thing that we always talk about, allowing people to be who they are rather than who I think they ought to be. And I didn't say it was easy. I know I'm not the only one, but I certainly have some judgments about things. And I remember years ago, my wife, something kind of came up about being opinionated, and I said, I don't think I'm opinionated. And she started laughing like hell. Mm-hmm. She goes, you're not opinionated. She said, you got something to say about everything.
Everything, right.
So I had to laugh, and it's like, oh, wow. You know what? I am opinionated. Mm-hmm. And we all got ways that we see things. And that's why we've talked and through other fellowships and whatnot, we look at the idea of my perception might be distorted. Mm-hmm. That's not really what's happening. But what I hear, what I think I see is interpreted in my brain, and it comes out looking like this. Right. And it's like looking through, trying to look through one of those windows with the frosted glass.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you know, even in my own behavior and beliefs, the system I've been working on, I want to be in a relationship with a female. Okay, I've never been in a relationship with a male, so that ain't. But I said that because, you know, in one of the programs, they tell us to wait a certain amount of time. So I've got this time now. But when I look back, all the relationships we're in basically were not healthy, because it was, this is what I want, this is what I need, and there was no communication. So I never become friends. Only one of my relationships did I become friends with somebody before we jumped into bed, because of this belief that I had that, you know, I got to check them out first as a female and then with my male parts before I can even associate it. And it should be the opposite. Mm-hmm. You know, I should treat them like a person and do some things with them prior to.
It's that old thing of, again, when I worked in the prisons, it would be this thing, I'd say, okay, how many of you found this girl, it's Thursday, you have sex, that's real good, next Tuesday you moved in.
Right.
You know, and people would laugh and they'd raise their hand, you know, and I'd say, okay, what's really going on there is you do not know this individual.
You don't.
You don't know where I said, there used to be this old time thing. What was it called? And they'd kind of look, and I said, it was called dating. Mm-hmm. To where you would hopefully get to know this other individual a little bit before I'm moving in with you.
Right.
And some of these guys, you know, because they were parolees and go back to a situation and then come, because I worked at a parole violation program, and they'd say, yeah, that she dropped a dime on me to my parole agent, and I said, you knew what she was like, didn't you?
Right.
Yeah. I said, that ain't her.
Right, it ain't her fault.
That's you. You were the thing of, you knew what was going on there, and you walked right in.
Into it, yeah.
And so don't complain, don't cry.
Right. You put yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, we were talking earlier about, I think I mentioned it earlier on the show, but about the drama, the TV shows, and they stay in that drama. My daughter got one of them DVRs or whatever to record. My hand to God, from 2 days after she got it, she put it on ID channel. And she records everything on that channel and goes back and watches all this crazy shit of who killed who stopped here. You know, she ain't got that drama. And then she sits up all night and rewinds the thing. Well, I got this much space left, so I got to look at these and get these off. Excuse me, so I could put some more on it. And, you know, I used to tell people, a long time ago, my daughter came to me and said, my eldest grandson, she said, Dad, he cursing and talking about MFs and cursing. He was 4 years old. I said, Teresa, you sit around and watch crazy TV all day. You play that crazy ass music, and it's cursing and swearing and that. So she asked me to babysit him about a month later, every day. We would sit down and watch Sesame Street or educational stuff. She came back to me about 8 months later and said, he know all his ABCs, he know all his colors. I said, yeah, and he could have learned that earlier, but you put him in this environment where he had to learn what he thought was important to you because that was the environment you created.
Yes, it's the old thing of, I used to have to with my ex-wife, literally with anybody. If I cuss you out all the time and call you names, you're a kid. Now, when you start to grow up, and then the adult gets mad because how dare you cuss me out? Well, if I speak to you a certain way, sooner or later you're going to speak to me
that way,
in that same way. And now I'm older, so now I'm going to think I'm going to have to beat your ass. Excuse me.
No,
but you know, or something like that. And it's like, no, we need to not talk. And I don't hate to go back to this, but it's like, you know, we need to learn to treat people the way we want to get treated. But a lot of times, there's people, they've been treated a certain way. Again, I've run into situations to where people either believe they deserve to get treated a certain way, or it really is, that's how you get treated. You know, so that's, again, that's normal.
You were there. I brought both of my granddaughters yesterday, and they did something that really pissed me off, because they ain't climbing on the tables at home and running. And that really pissed me off. And so when I got home, I talked to her about it. You know, I work with kids, and I spend a lot of time talking to kids, because the meeting before that Monday, I took her to the park to see homeless people, because I was reading a book, and where we had the meeting was in a church, and I was reading a book and teaching the Lord's Prayer. And I said, you ain't never been hungry. You've never not had someplace you can lay your head. She only 6. But getting back to what you said, I took her to the meetings yesterday, both of them, and on the way there, they were fighting over a fidget spinner. And it really pissed me off, because my therapist had, the first one I ever seen my therapist had, well, she told me she was getting them for $3 out this book. So I literally have 5 or 6 fidget spinners on my dresser, and I've given everyone on one. So I said, why are y'all fighting over something? Every one of y'all got one. And I kept screaming to the back of the van and screaming, and they were still fussing and fighting. And I turned around and I said, why don't y'all shut the F up and be quiet before I come back there and whoop your A. And then I apologized. I said, but that's what, and they stopped immediately, because that's how their mothers talk to them. My oldest daughter is a social worker, and we were at a restaurant, and she showed me that exact thing. Ori, which is the youngest one, she wanted some spaghetti off of Teresa's plate and my plate. I don't remember, because they had ordered a pizza. But we asked the gentleman there to give her a plate. So he brought a nice little size plate. And Teresa told her to say, thank you. She just wasn't going to do it. So I'm fixing to go there. And Teresa said, Dad, we've already talked about this. Don't do that. She expects conflict. That's what her mother gives her. That's what her grandmother gives her. So if you give her the conflict, you just buy right into it. And Teresa just turned, looked at me, and talked to me a while. And we talked to Jemiah. We had 4 minutes. He talked to Jemiah, and we kept Jemiah's attention to Teresa. We just talked. We didn't ignore her, but she was sitting there. Finally, she said, I still want some spaghetti. Teresa said, you got to say thank you to that man. She got down off that bumper seat, went over there and said thank you to the man, and came back and asked if I could have my spaghetti. Now, in my house, they'd have sent her to bed. They'd have done something crazy. So she expects this conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And when she doesn't get that conflict, she really does not know how to react. You know, and now I'm trying to retrain her. And for some reason, her mother the last month has rose up some degrees. I don't know what happened or what. Maybe it's this crazy food coming home. I have no clue. But, you know, so I try, you know, to reteach her. Because I was always there and I allowed a lot of it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But Kenny said something to me, one of my best friends. He said, you the one that done what you did over the last year, 14 months. They didn't.
That's exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
When you change, I've seen it to where somebody gets clean, sober, whatever word we want to put on it, they come back to a situation and they're surprised or whatever that people are still doing what, and it's like, you're the one that went over here and learned how to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got this unrealistic expectation, and that's something we ought to talk about sometime.
That could do it.
To this thing that, why are these people acting like this?
Mm-hmm.
Why, you know, it's famous. I go somewhere, I had a guy one time, went to treatment for 9 months, came home, and then got mad because nobody in the family was back to trusting him.
Right.
And it's like, okay, you do some. I said, you did something for, say, 9 years.
Right.
You're gone 90 days, and you come back and you think everybody's supposed to fall into order.
Right, and think you didn't change. I had somebody a long time ago ask me to be a sponsor. You know what that is. And I told him we need to wait a couple of weeks, and he came back a week later. He says, my kids are still hiding their piggy banks, and they still putting money away and locking their bedroom door. How long did you do this? He said, I've done it for 15 years. So you expect them in 2 months, because you got 60 days for everything to change. And, you know, and the books we talk about and what we're talking about is behaviors and beliefs. And a lot of behaviors come from what we believe.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, you know, and that's why I like having you on the show, man, because you got a lot of knowledge in that, and I'm really glad. I think we got about 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left. So, I always want to, we're going to talk a couple more minutes, but I always want to thank you for coming on the show.
I appreciate it.
And I would love to
Glad
have you
to
again, man, because
come here.
I really like what you say, and you have a lot of knowledge because of your background, and we're trying to reach out to kids and help people with this program. So I'm really looking forward to getting a grant and maybe being able to work with you in a different way and get you some money for it, because we're trying to get, he has a 501c3 already in place. I just got to talk to a couple of grant writers. And I know we got a program that I'm trying to put together called Joy, Joining Old and Young. And
Okay.
I've done it before where I put a senior with a young person. And and I'll talk to you about it off camera more, but I did it because we had a program where the kids had to work during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And I put them in with a senior because it was within a facsimile of a block was the center and seniors home. And then over the course of the summer, what happened was, I told them they had to go on Saturdays and walk to the store with them. That was part of the project that they had to do to get this money or this bike that they got. And the seniors started telling us we're not afraid to walk down the street anymore. Because when I'm walking the store with John, with Billy, Paul, and Pete, and whoever know them, so they start to respect us because we're with them. And they start saying, well, you know, them old people ain't that bad. She knew my grandmother, he knew my uncle. And they realize that they're still people. And, you know, I think I'm about out of time. Again, I want to thank you for being here because your insight is fantastic. And I love talking to you. Not just here, we talk a lot. Yeah. And I want to thank you for being on the show. This is Ernest Spencer saying goodbye for no fences. Bye.